I'm going to show you how to increase your sales response rate by automating your lead generation process. Let's go. Here's the demo of the cold email outreach. It's a personalized template. So as you can see here on this Google Sheet, it's quite empty. So if we go back to init in and we hit execute workflow, let's see if this works. Let's give it a few minutes. Okay, so this has completed its run. And if we go back to the Excel sheet, we can see now that there's a list of these leads that it's actually giving us. So it's giving us first name, last name, email, website, position, location, phone number, and even a message that we could send. So from here, we could then go to a email automation platform and just pull this Google Sheet, and it could essentially automate your entire outreach for you. Okay, so where I like to start from is actually just starting off with a node. Just a quick clicking test workflow. So this is just called a trigger, and you needed to actually execute this workflow. So that's essentially where I start. And then step number 2 would be to actually um, create a Google Sheet. So that's what I've done here with this Google Sheet. And you can just create this on your Google Drive. So that's essentially where you would need to create it. So if we go back here to init in, um, essentially what you would have to do is create a get search node. So if you have to click on this, you'd see that I've already signed in, and I have another video to just describe how to actually sign in and connect with your Google Cloud API. But that's what you need to do. So once you've signed in, you can just select the relevant account and actually pull that sheet that you just created. So what you'd have to do is search your document list and then get the name of the sheet. And then the second thing you need to do is actually select the sheet within that document. And that's what I did here. So if you go back to this sheet, you'll see that it's on the URL sheet in this Google Sheet. So if we go back to init in, and if you hit execute workflow, what's coming up is what's in the document. So that's what you're seeing right here. The next thing that you need to do is actually call a Apify scraper. So how you would do that is, because init doesn't have a Apify app integration, you would have to use an HTTP node. So that's what you're doing here. You're actually just creating an HTTP node. And how do you set this up? So you'd go to a platform called Apify. And within Apify, what I'm doing is I'm searching for an actor that's called Apollo Scraper. Now, there's many Apollo Scrapers, and I'll walk you through why I'm actually searching for this actor. But the logic behind it is you need something to actually get you the leads. And what this is doing is it's scraping Apollo. And there's many different Apollo Scrapers. So what I do is I usually look at the cost of it. So every 1,000 leads that it's giving you, you're paying $0.75, which is quite cheap. So this is the one that I actually use, and I've used in this workflow. And what I'm doing is I'm basically going and getting the API from this. So how do I do that? If I go to my settings and then I click on API and integrations. So this is actually my personal API token. So of course, don't share this with anyone, because if they have access to this, then they could essentially eat your credits. And this is a free account, so whoever gets this, it's pretty chill because the cap is $5. And that's also another thing to note is that you could get a free Apify account, and every month you get $5 credit, which is pretty cool. And of course, you can pay, I think it's $39 or $29, how much it is, and then you would basically get that as credit, if that makes sense. So if you're paying $29 a month for Apify, your wallet will be loaded with $29 worth of credit. So it's pretty cool. And as mentioned, every time you run an actor, it eats up at your credits. So what I'm doing is I'm going to API and clicking on reference, and then I'm scrolling down to actually find what it is that I'm looking for. So if you think about it logically, like, what are you trying to do? You're trying to run this actor while extracting data from it so that it can pull that data and it can be called in your init workflow, right? So, just using that logic, I think that it's going to be this one. So it's running the actor while with an input. So the input, I'll explain now where you get the input from, but you're getting the data set that you're then feeding to init. So what you would have to do from here is just copy this curl command and go to init. And where it says import curl, you would then paste this entire thing, right? Now, I've already done this, but then you just hit import. And once you've hit import, then your page will be set up like so. Work on a few things. The first thing is URL, right? So this thing here is, where do I get this from? Now, if I go back to Appify, and if I scroll to my actors and Apollo, this is actually the API from this set actor. So API endpoints, once more, you want to run the actor and get the dataset items. So all I do here is copy this and I go back to init and I paste this here. Now this you can see is my actual API token. And of course, like what you'd have to do is copy this entire token and scroll down and paste it here. So where it says bearer under header, you'd have to paste this in. And then the last thing you have to do is actually go to and input the body content. So basically what this is doing is, if you go back to the actor in Appify, and if you go to, you can see that in order to set this up, you need a search URL, right? And I'll tell you in a minute where I'm getting this from. But if I scroll down on how to actually set this up, because this is a free account, I'm only using, I think I have a maximum of 25 leads that I can generate, right? Because it's a free account. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm setting a maximum limit of 0.5, setting this to 25, and I'm copying this here, the JSON code, and I'm pasting it in here. So that's what you see here, right? Now this search URL, what you want to do is actually get this from your previous node, which is your Google Sheet, right? And I'll explain now how this came about. But basically, let's just finish the setup, not to confuse you, but that's exactly what I've done here. And that's how I did it. I just got this code from that Appify actor. So you don't need to change anything else. And if you hit execute step, it's basically going to run this actor using the search URL and output all this data, which is what's happening here. So the next thing that we need to do and talk about is, where am I actually getting this URL from? So I'm getting the URL from a platform called Apollo. So Apollo is the best way to describe Apollo is it scrapes LinkedIn Sales Navigator, right? So if you come to set up your Apollo here, once more, you can set up a free account. And if you scroll to find people, so home, find people, you can actually search for your ideal customer profile. So you'd have to know kind of what their job title is, so who the decision makers are, where they're based, number of employees, and the industry that they're in. And of course, if you have a paid account, you can go a bit more detailed to find your ICP. But basically, what I'm doing here is I'm taking the URL and I'm going to Appify and I'm pasting this URL here. That's what I'm doing. And second thing that I'm doing is I'm going to this Google Sheet and I'm pasting the URL here. And if you go back to init, once you run this Google node, it's going to pull whatever URL you've just pasted in. And then if you execute this workflow, it's going to pull that URL from that Google Sheet. So it's really important from Apollo to paste the URL into that Google Sheet, because from there you can actually pull that URL into this workflow. The next thing that we need to do is just set up a quick filter, right? Because you're receiving a lot of data from Appify, because now Appify has scraped the Apollo URL that you gave it, but we only want to return websites and emails. So that's what I'm doing here with this node. The next thing that we need to do is actually scrape the website. Now, why are we scraping the website? Because the logic behind this workflow is, can we look for a database of leads? Can we then pull their email and website from that database? Can we learn something about that website, i.e., can we research it? And then can we take that and put it into some sort of AI that will research it on our behalf and perhaps also give us a tailored message? So I guess that's the logic behind this. So how do we actually set this up? If I have to double click here, what I'm actually doing is I'm just getting the URL from the previous node. So if you go to the limit node that we just set up, let's scroll down and try to find that. Company, cool. So if you go to company, you'll see the website. So that's all I'm doing here. I'm pulling that in. And that's how you get the URL from the website. So of course, like, every time it's going to look for, in this filter node, it's going to look for that specific website that we're pulling in. Cool. The next thing that we need to do is get the links from the previous website that we scraped, and we're going to be scraping multiple pages. So what I just did here was created an HTML node, and basically what it's doing is it's getting the links from the previous website. And that's essentially what this setup is about. And the next thing that we need to do is actually format that data that we just got, right? So because we're getting a lot of links, it's going to be a bit unsorted. And that's what I'm doing here with this manual mapping node, right? So basically what I'm saying is create me columns for first name, last name, email, website, headline, location, phone number, and give me all those links. So that's what I'm essentially doing here. I'm just kind of like formalizing the data, because what's happening is from the previous nodes, you're getting very unsorted data that is sometimes it's not relevant to this actual workflow. Like you're getting the history of the person's employment, because, as mentioned earlier, Apollo scrapes LinkedIn. And if you think about how LinkedIn is structured, if you look at a person's experience, it's not just the current workplace and where they currently work, but some people have a lot of experience and a lot of different jobs that they've worked at. So it's pulling all of that data, and all of that is not relevant for this workflow. So what I'm doing now is I'm saying there's a lot of items that needs to go through this process, and the next process is basically taking those websites and those links and putting it into a chat model, right? Summarizing those websites and then giving us a message, right? But how NNN works, it's going to do this multiple times. So I just created this loop over item so that it kind of passes one at a time and it doesn't overwhelm the system. And that's what I basically did here. So I just um, I'm sending through one at a time. The next thing that we need to do is I just created this split out node. So basically what this is doing is I'm telling it to just give me all the links, because in the next one I'm filtering out um, links that do not start with H, right? And what do I mean by this? If you have to go back, you'll see here that it's got links from the previous from the website. Everything that has a click. If you're on a website and if you click on something, that's considered a link. So, for example, like the phone number here, it's not really relevant to um, when we're actually putting this into the AI, because the AI is going to be scraping the website and giving us a summary about the website. So we just need to feed it the relevant links. And that's what we're doing here. And I'm basically saying in this one, just give me the links that begin with an H. You can also basically use a backslash and say, starts with, instead of H, you can say // But yeah, I mean, for me, H also works in this workflow. The next thing we need to do is remove duplicate URLs. Now, of course, it's giving you a lot of items. As you can see, like 147 items here, right? So we have to just remove the URLs. Sorry, remove duplicate URLs. That's what we're doing in this node. And then I'm basically limiting it. So once more, there's a lot of items that's coming through here. And I'm just saying, hey, can we max it out at 10? Once more, just to help the workflow. And in this node, I just created an HTTP node to concatenate because basically data is getting pulled from multiple websites. So I want to actually match the website with the correct data, if that makes sense. So if you look at an example would be, if I'm getting back a website, this .design, am I actually getting like the relevant links to said website? And I'm not getting links from a different website with for this .design group. So that's basically what I'm doing here. And then a markdown node. So what I'm doing here, I'm just converting from HTML to markdown. It's just like easier for the AI to kind of read. That's the first thing. And then secondly, like it's in terms of tokens, it's a bit cheaper. So if you're looking at like the token cost, if you're running, this OpenAI node, it's quite expensive. Like every time for this to summarize websites that it's receiving. So with a markdown, to actually, you're removing some of the processing that it's doing. So that's what this node is doing here. And of course, I'm getting the data from the previous HTML node. And then I'm going to, I created this OpenAI chat, right? And basically what I'm doing here is I'm summarizing all those websites that it's receiving. So if I click on here, once more, I'm connecting it to my OpenAI account. If you don't know how to do that, you can watch a previous video where I actually walk you through how to, create how to connect your API account. But I've gone ahead and connected mine. So basically what you have to do is you go to your OpenAI account and you get your API key. So this is already set up, and I'm just using a GPT 4.1 Nano. And the first thing that I'm doing is I'm giving it a system prompt, and I'm basically saying that you are a helpful, intelligent website scraping assistant. So I'm giving it its kind of role, and then I'm actually prompting it to do the following. Just open this up. So I'm basically saying, hey, you provided markdown scrape websites of pages, return it in this format, and then I've been giving it rules, right? So you can, write whatever instructions you want accordingly to ensure that it gives you, what you're looking for. And in our case, the purpose of this is to allow it to to give summaries on the websites that it's scraping, so that the next node could then write personalized emails to this. So that's basically what I'm doing here. And then I'm just aggregating it. So this is just called an aggregated node that you can just hook up here. And now here's where I'm actually writing the icebreaker message. So if we click on this, once more connecting it to my OpenAI account and giving it a system prompt. So you're a helpful sales assistant. So, you want it to, for this part, you want the message to be very personal, because if you sending out this cold automated system, a few things that I've noticed is, kind of like A/B testing your copy and trying different things. So, this is something that I've written, and you can write whatever you want to based on your business. Giving it an overview. I'm giving it the context of the data that it's receiving, and what the goals are. Giving it the instructions, some tools, and then just some examples, and then it kind of like will give you that entire it's going to output the message according to this. So yeah, you have to play around with copy. What you could also do here is add links to Loom videos, and video actually converts. I'm not sure how much more it converts. But it does convert more if you add a video, because it's a very personal. And you could add a generic video about, for example, if I'm reaching out to businesses to sell AI automation services and to build out the sales system for them, I could essentially just add a quick link to this video of how the system works. And they'd be like, hey, I built this out for X, Y, and Z. You want to lead with some sort of, firstly, your intention of why you're reaching out. And um, what I've noticed that helps in that first line is something that you have in common or common interest. I think that really helps. Of course, if you know someone, that would be also ideal. And of course, now, just to summarize, the this AI bot, this AI agent, is actually scraping these websites. It's getting the summary from the previous AI agent, and now it's personalizing a message according to that summary and according to what it's learned from those websites. So just keep that in mind when you're writing out your message. What I would also do here is add some sort of credibility. So first is something like an icebreaker. That's something of interest. Second is what you're actually reaching out for and what your actual offer is. Third is some sort of credibility. Who have you done it for? What have your results been? And then sort of ending off with a call to action. That's what I noticed is makes for good copy. And then of course adding a Loom video to show your credibility, even if you don't have any customers and you're kind of just shooting from the hip. Adding some sort of thing that you've done. In my case, if it's building out a system, kind of demo the system so that the person that I'm pitching, they have the video of how the thing works, and it just adds a next level. It shows that you're just going a bit more. It's not just a cold email, but you personalizing it. Like your goal of this is to get a click, is to perhaps direct that person either to book a meeting or to click on to your website, to your socials, so that they can learn more information. You want engagement from this cold email, so your copy should essentially reflect that. My advice is just playing around with your copy, A/B testing a few things and seeing what works. The next thing that we need to do is now just attach it back to the Google Sheet. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm adding an append sheet, and I'm creating a Google Sheet node, connecting my account, and I'm the document is the same document from before. Sheet, same. So actually, I'm creating a new tab, new sheet, and then I'm actually mapping out the values to send it, right? And where am I getting this data from? So if you logically think about this entire system, where did it pull first name, last name, email, website, headline, location from? It pulled it from previous nodes. So, for example, icebreaker was pulled from the previous node. So all I'm doing is I'm dragging that into here. So that's essentially what you'd have to do. Phone number, where am I getting that from? So if I logically think about which node this is going to come from, if you go to the filter that we've built earlier on, so basically what I would do is just drag all of these into the Google Sheet. Email address, website, and just look for the tag here in the corresponding column here that we've created. And basically what you're going to get if you go back to this Google Sheet is first name, last name, email, website, headline, location, phone number, and icebreaker. So those are the columns that we're actually creating here. That's what I'm doing with this node here. And that is the entire system. So actually, once you have all this data here, as mentioned, you can go to a platform called Instantly. There's many out there. You could use HubSpot. You can use many, cold email automation systems, and you could import that Google Sheet. And even Instantly, I think you get 300 credits. So if I pay for this, I think I can't remember the price is, probably like $29. Like most of these softwares are around that price. You could then expand the number of people that you're reaching out to. So the more the more subscriptions that you pay for, the more paid versions that you have, and platforms that you pay for, the more you'll be able to actually send out. And yep, these platforms actually keep track. You can also set email sequences. You can set follow-up emails. You could set perhaps automated workflows if they click on something. Yeah, I recommend using Instantly. It's pretty easy and chilled to get started and to use. Cool, guys. That was the build. If you have any questions, please comment down below. And if you want me to build anything else out, also comment down below. And please check out the other videos on my channel.